Welcome to Higher Density Living. She said it before me.
What's up, Mr. Alexander McKay?
Living large.
Are you living large? You just got back from the great state of Florida. Yeah, were you in Miami?
Did not go to Miami. Not for the amount of chaos that's going down there. No, I was just outside of Orlando. Saw my first two alligators.
They're cool, isn't it? Aren't they so cool to see like this dinosaur? Because that's what it is.
They are way more docile seeming than crocodiles. Crocodiles are like angry and have all this like very sharp, like very like dinosaur features, like angry dinosaur. Like how?
Well, I mean, you also have to look at the environment that they're in. I mean, in Florida, it's all like eating fish and snails and you know snakes. Where there, it's like water buffalo. Yeah, I mean, it's a dog eat dog world in a crocodile life. In alligator life, it's kind of like I'm in the bayous, I'm chilling, I'm in the Everglades, hanging out.
Yeah, and just like basking in the sun.
Yeah, they're pretty. I've heard that. I know they run really fast. They can run as fast as a horse in a short period of time.
Yeah, is for a brief moment. I think they run up to like 30 miles an hour.
So they could grab a human.
Yeah,
quick.
Well, if I get a head start, hopefully he wouldn't be able to catch up too fast.
But I know their mouths are like a lot shorter and kind of rounder. I don't think they have like the bite pressure even close to a crocodile.
Yeah, crocodiles are just vicious.
I don't think there's even a lot of alligator attacks on man.
No, crocodiles though, especially those guys that stick their hand in it, that you put on a show, and then it does the death roll.
Oh, yeah.
Dingus.
Well, it's like if you touch any part of their mouth or they feel anything, they automatically, bam, that's just part of it.
It's like a clam in the ocean.
So you have to be like really, you can do it, but you got to be like really.
I don't even want to.
No, you're just
asking. That thing starts like twisting.
I'm not going to trust a limb of my body to something that has a brain of about that big. Like a dolphin I get, orca I get. I mean, they train those, to do things, but.
It's funny what. You're not like this. It's funny what calls us to do things that we shouldn't do. Whether it's putting our hand on a crocodile's open mouth or having a siren on a rock force me to jump off into the open seas and swim to it at the expense of my own life. Whether it's something in real life or myth, it has a great effect on the choices we make in our mind.
Good segue.
Thank you.
The myth in the mind.
Yeah. You found this phenomenal article, The Myth in the Mind, on aeon.co. And the subtext of this starts with, saturated with rites and symbols, psychology feeds a deep human need once nourished by mythology.
And we're going to kind of get into the dichotomy of both psychology and mythology. And there's like this understanding. Ramil Gabriel, he's the associate professor of psychology and founding fellow at the research group in mind, science, and culture at Columbia College, Chicago. He's the author of this, and he's written several books. This is a 3,100-word article, so this is a pretty heavy duty.
Pretty sizable.
And he starts off like this. Psychology is not solely the science of the mind. It's a form of knowledge and mess with our mythical understanding of deeper questions of significance. So I want to stop right there because when we look at psychology, we always remember the 1950s, and we've talked about this before, and I want to bring this up again. But the how it doesn't align with teach, learn, and learn, teach. Like a psychologist or psychiatrist, and it's that not providing information. I'm over you. I'm the expert.
I'm better than you. You're coming in because you're sick, and I'm the only person that can heal you. I'm gonna write this down. Marketing in the 50s was all about your lifestyle, right? The ego of I. Do it for the American dream, but that's your dream. There was nothing that was collaborative about it. There was nothing unifying about it. It was a very sterile sense of the world and your place in it. Just think about how we have our environments now. People sterilize everything. They're not really living with their environment. They're always constantly trying to control it, even at the microbial level. And when you think about like stories and like health, parables have been huge for so long. Like myth, these things where it was spoken word and story translated to someone, right? And there's great learning that happens in the interaction of being the listener and learning from the story that is being told from some other person. And this other person who knows what their experience are, but everybody carries it in their own way, but there's something to be learned. But when you're with like a psychiatrist, Psychiatrist is just asking you questions that really carry no emotional depth. There's nothing of a parable to be learned in what is going on there. They're not asking you to really think for yourself.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, just have, right affirmative thinking, ignore these thoughts, don't do this. But like, you need to have both of those sides.
Right.
And myth speaks about those polarities of life.
Well, it creates this victimization that you need. And when we look at Western medicine, we see this a lot, this idea that you need this expert. And the expert is externally going to solve something that you don't have the power internally to solve yourself.
Right. But and then in contrast, stark contrast to a myth, the myth is like you are the hero, or there's some hero within this myth.
Right.
And that hero always goes through a challenge. This is why Star Wars was so popular. This is why the hero's journey is so important. It is an archetype that is subconsciously shared throughout human history. Our genetics connect with it instantly.
Yes.
Something deep in our brain is like, yes, that makes sense. That is something I can align with. And it's not a feeling that you'd ever get by being with a psychiatrist laying on a couch or having them just like scribble things down about you. This is actually connecting with a journey that another individual is on, and then you putting yourself in the place of that journey. It's this deeper sense of empathy with this dialogue that is really happening when someone is speaking of this myth. It's a deeper sense of really healing that can happen when people can I apply myself into the same sort of path that has happened here? Can I be that hero? If you look at, for instance, I've done a lot of studying of Alexander the Great, right? And his thing was like, I need to look to Achilles. I need to look beyond the Greek heroes. I want to see where they went, how far they went in this world, and I want to go beyond it.
Yes.
It allows an individual to take the place, the journey, the idea, the learnings that had happened from someone else, embody them in that message, and then carry it further into their own life. But it's not, are you receiving any of the values of a psychiatrist? No. It's what he's learned in his schooling and through books, and he's just regurgitating nonsense that really doesn't have a full, applicable, realistic value of what is really going on.
Well, I mean, and when you look globally and you see Norse mythology, you see the samurai, you see, like you mentioned, the Greek gods.
Yeah.
You look at, even Native American tradition, and whenever you go through all of their myths, no matter where it's at on the globe. I mean, even, like you said in movies, Conan the Barbarian, perfect example.
Yeah.
When you look at all these movies, it's all that same underlying truth.
All the time. It's just painted in a different light.
Right.
And I think that's what's truly fantastic, is that a myth has the flexibility to adapt to your situation, to adapt to your current state of thought. Mm-hmm. Why have myths lasted for so long? Psychiatry is a young profession in the total expanse of human history.
And I think this is what Mr. Gabriel's trying to do, this professor, with this, because he says this, in our secular age, many people no longer turn to sacred books to understand who and what they are.
Yeah. When you look at they look to the psychiatrist to tell them who they are, what state they are in, how they should define their lives, rather than I'm going to look to a sacred text that empowers me, if it truly is one that's empowering, that respects my free will, and says, time for you to think for yourself. Time for you to decide what your hero's journey is going to look like.
Well, myth is always interpreted for, that spiritual awakening, or that, if you want to logically in neuroscience, an epiphany.
Yeah.
Of what you should receive out of that personally. So, I can read the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita, or the Quran or whatever, and I may read a passage, and you may read a passage, and you're going to have a different interpretation for you and what you need in that moment.
Right.
I think that's what makes books sacred and timeless.
I agree. And that's the flexibility of this.
Yes.
Psychiatrics is changing all the time. There's nothing actually rooted and truthful about it.
Well, the problem that I have, especially when you get in like Freudian society, I've been studying a lot here lately on this, is this idea that we're mindless monkeys that, put to the masses, we'll just go crazy.
This is my contention against the lady who was down in Gombe. I don't know why her name's escaped me. She did all the work with the chimps.
Oh, yeah. Jane Goodall.
Jane Goodall. This is my contention against Goodall. She had a very Freudian view of our association with chimps. And I completely disagree with that point. That's a huge miss. It actually, there's like almost like no respect for creation at all to actually say something like that. But I mean, that's just my thought.
It also takes away the will, the soul, that spiritual aspect, the universal knowingness that lies within us.
Yeah, you just see him and just like, I'm so unknowing that I have no control over anything. I'm just destined for chaos if you put us all together, because that's what my genetics demand is so.
Yeah, and he kind of says, and I think he's trying to bridge, which I understand. I mean, if he changes, and this may be wrong, and we'd love to have him on the podcast, but I think he's trying to say, hey, psychology needs some mythology. He says this: psychology is where many find meaning. Indeed, the stories we tell ourselves through psychology fill many of the same functions served in the traditional beliefs, practices of mythology, falling somewhere between a social science, a natural science, and a human science. So I want to stop right there. A social science, a natural science, and a human science. So, we can look at biology, we can look and this is something that when we look at nature and creation.
Yeah, you're precisely correct. So psychiatry is a human science. Mm-hmm. A natural science is one that's happening like geology, things of that nature, biology. Mm-hmm. And social science is how do we look at all of ourselves.
And I think psychology plays into social science more than it does looking at creation.
Oh, it definitely does, right? Because it's trying to really understand human behavior and the illnesses that come from human behavior. But I think that's albeit limited because there's a whole nother side to it that is unseen. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it with only 50%, you're like half-baked in this. Your theories will always be half-baked.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He says, psychology aspires to the statuses of the physical science, but it tries to explain much more and ends up revealing much less.
Yeah. They try to over and over and over explain all these things, but it actually ends up telling you nothing. How many times have I mean, I don't know how many of our listeners are on LinkedIn. Someone puts a presentation up and someone just keeps like over, explaining all these different points. But what was learned at the end of the presentation? Absolutely nothing.
Yes.
But if you put up a presentation about a myth, I guarantee there's going to be 80% recall on people that can tell you what happened in that story.
We're evolutionarily desired to understand stories.
That's what it is. This is all a story. Yes. It's a great story. It's a phenomenal one. Being down here in this school, learning, evolving, It's a beautiful story. All the mistakes we make, all the, the great gains we make, all of those things accrue to this wonderful journey in the collective.
Yeah, he says the story, the practices, the rituals, they're all for us a desire for explanation.
Yeah. People want answers. Mm-hmm. Psychiatrists can't give you answers. The field's too young. So you need to look to things that have been timeless. This is why we talk about HDL. This is why we talk about creational laws, right? This is why we speak about the law. We speak about things that are timeless, things that are obvious, things that are, observational to anybody. Anybody can go out and see them, right? This is not something hidden. It's not something occult. And if there was any evidence to point to the validity of the statement that this individual made writing this article, this professor, look at the movies.
Yes.
How many movies have been out there that have been massive global blockbusters and they're completely framed on a hero's journey, on myth? It tells you right there in that evidence, that is what people are hooked to.
Yeah, well, you can see martyrs and dictators. So, sure. You can play those out in modern time when we look at our society. You look at these martyrs, and I saw that picture the other day and it's a beautiful picture. I don't know if you want to put it up. Pick a nice one, though, but it's in Vietnam, the monk that was
burning himself
in Vietnam. Yeah. And they have a beautiful picture where it's, and I'm saying it's beautiful because this whole desire, and he's so zen, bro. He's like just perfectly in a meditative state when the flames are around him.
Yeah. And it's not to say that you need to burn yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, he was at this passionate point of nonviolence in the sense of saying, in this beautiful way, in the sense of saying, I know it's almost like this futuristic knowingness of like millions of lives are going to be lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can see him right there. Just look at his face. I mean, just how, he's just
crazy.
So.
And you know what here's where I have a contention with this. Nonviolence, this is a function of violence.
Oh, yeah, towards himself, right.
Towards himself. So it's an albeit hypocritical statement, but I do understand.
I think he's looking at the denial of the self for the greater good.
Yeah, and it's taking on the martyr role.
He's understanding, at that time, especially because this was done in the very beginning, I think even before the...
June 1963?
Yeah, 63. So this is before it starts to go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's thinking of his life and then, millions of lives. And in 63, you had this whole insurgence of like all these, the French are involved, Cambodia's involved, Russia, we're involved, you have all of the CIA's there by then, and we just have this huge, and I forgot how many American troops alone died in the Vietnam War.
A ridiculous amount.
So, whenever I see something like that, but what I'm saying is, whenever we see that stands the test of time. That was done in 1963.
1963, and look, it's just...
That sticks in our head.
That image hasn't left. I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, see, there we go.
And I had seen the picture once before in my life. It's those people taking those journeys.
Right.
And that journey is shared, whether it's one that we agree with or disagree with.
Yeah, and that's martyrdom, and we can get into that. But even when we look on the other side, the dictators, I can say Hitler to you or Stalin, and most people, even young people. Yeah. If I say Hitler, most young people, we'll never name our kids Adolf or Hitler.
That's
or anything
not a popular name anymore. Yeah,
but I could take an 18-year-old and say Hitler, and they'll know exactly who I'm talking about.
Isn't it incredible?
And how long ago was that?
Yeah, and he was essentially the enemy in that hero's journey.
Yes.
So if you look at the collective of all of us as humankind, we were like this hero trying to move forward, and we were blocked by this major enemy over here. Mm-hmm. But for the Nazis on their side, they took on their own hero's journey.
Yes.
We are greater than whatever this thing might be. So we need to do
this.
And
here are the enemies.
Here are the enemies.
Yes, yeah.
And those are the total balance of those polarities that are happening.
But they're not real. What people aren't realizing is in this evolutionary process, we're learning in these journeys. Mm-hmm. Germany's learning. Yeah. They've understood what they were and what they are now. I mean, they basically support the European Union.
Yeah, they
and they've disemboweled and over and over and over again apologized. It does not discredit what that country did at all.
No, but they recognize the error.
But I would say any young German that you talk to now, besides the fringe far right groups, I would imagine, there, but any young German you talk to right now would not have anything to do with that. But I love what Jordan Peterson says, and I think I've shared this before, but it's so true. He goes, to think that you would be on the opposite side is foolish. Because if you really think about it, and this should make you extremely fearful and holding responsibility inside of yourself. Because we always say that we would be on the other side. But he said the odds are, 90% odds is that you would be raising your hand and in that crowd too.
100%. Because
that puts chills on me, bro. Because
as an outsider, you're like, I would never salute, anything or like be pro-Nazi.
But put yourself in 1938,
in
39.
their shoes, in the current economic, social, and political state
Make yourself
of the country,
20 years old.
20 years old, and understand if you don't join, they're probably going to shoot you. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a low chance you're going to be on the opposite side.
Right.
And you're going to see it so much, it's going to bury this German myth. Mm-hmm. It's a German myth so deep into the subconscious that everything you do accrues to making that myth reality. Think about that.
And so in these myths, this human achievement, and this is what we're really, and this is, evolution, but this human achievement or this notion, and he talks about this notion of salvation, this progress that we want, ethics, the notions of reality that is communicated through these formats of mythology. That's why it's so important.
Well, think about this German myth. This is a great metaphor. Germany was strong, okay? And then they got the just beaten to a pulp.
Right.
There was nothing left. It was almost like the hero was at its weak point. But now that's when it learns, like when it hits rock bottom in that hero's journey and has to build itself back up. It was ripe. It was prime for this part of its journey, even though it was a journey that was very service to self, very negatively oriented.
Yes.
But it was still taking that journey. There was still something to be learned here through this process. And everybody was connecting with that ideology, that myth that was running through the country at that time.
Yeah, and listen to what he says. This goes right into what you just said. Cultural products that fulfill the function of myth, whereby characters and stories gives us the means to understand the world we live in.
Correct. It helps people make the world palatable for themselves. It helps people move through traumas in life. It helps them feel like, wow, I'm not the only one that's going through the learning process.
Yes.
That's the important part of a myth. But if we look at psychiatrics, this is just you. You're on your own. This is, the life is limited. It ends when you die, and it's just blackness.
Yeah, it's so nihilistic.
It's so nihilistic, the entire thing. It's so sterile. Nothing is to be learned, whether it's good or bad.
But people don't even realize, you mentioned the movies and stuff like that, but I want to tell everyone, consumerism puts you at the hero. Done properly, like, look at this car. You can get this 1950s. You can get this hot chick.
Yeah, and they're trying to make you the hero in your community.
Yeah, exactly.
In
what's your neighbor
marriage
going to think about this?
Yes, that's precisely right. And that was that sort of lifestyle marketing that was going on. So people twist that hero's journey for whatever they want, but you need to recognize the power of that myth. That whole story, everything about those archetypes are so magnetic to human nature.
I know, yeah, that's but I mean, we can go back to kind of in the superhero comic books. Why do we, as a child, why do we love consuming those stories? Yeah, because you have someone that has been given superpowers. Conan the Barbarian's this way. We both love Conan the Barbarian, but whenever you look at something that someone has been given superpowers, whether it's masculine or feminine, doesn't matter, and then from there they selflessly, instead of taking those powers and using them for their own good to further their own, unless they're evil, but a good superhero is one that's extraordinary and uses that extraordinary to serve mankind. Yeah,
rather than invert. But what do you find? The polarity. There's another person with power, but they're trying to, harm mankind. They're trying to harm people. They're trying to disunify. And it's those power between those polarities, those forces. Whether it's a child reading the comic book or a 45 or 60-year-old person reading the comic book, the message, the feeling, all those there are the same.
Yes.
The archetype has not changed.
Yes.
The value hasn't changed regardless of time. The power of the myth is timeless because there are deep, deep-rooted truths in this thing itself.
Yeah, and he even goes into sacred rites, and I thought this was good. He says that we may not be doing vision quests or blood sacrifices anymore.
Oh, you call the blessing?
But he said, in our engagement with art, drugs, cinema, rock music, all-night dance parties, these are our sacred rites. These are our things that we're trying to escape the banal and profane and turn around and say, in and of ourselves, there's something that is greater than as a collective. And then, we both like EDM music or, I don't know, if Grateful Dead concerts, whatever it may be. There's this whole idea of something that's greater than, like,
looking above and beyond that
yes,
band.
Yeah.
All the ideas, even in their artwork, everything is about unity, love, understanding. They have ribbons that are just like tied together and like those old like springtime like pagan poles that the people would dance around.
Yeah.
Think about that, but it's the connection of all of those things. That it's always alluding to this greater, higher purpose, collective unification of all. And the myth is its own, the music is its own myth. The journey of people going to these EDM raves that are enormous has its own thing. People come from all over the world.
And they're even themed in different types of mythology.
Yeah, it's like we know where it encapsulates. We need to stop ignoring it and actually integrate it into our modern ideas of medicine and psychiatrics and or psychology, whatever it is. It needs to be brought back because it has weight. It has value to it.
Yeah, and I want to get into, on the next episode, we're going to take this article a little bit farther and what constitutes a mythology.
Sure. Let's bring it back.
I want to get into that. And I want everybody to know we have some updates on the website. So it's higherdensityliving.com. We encourage you, if this has been, our downloads have been crazy here lately. So the number one thing that you can do for us, and how, whether it's Spotify or Apple, those are the two main where we're getting, the algorithm doesn't go off of you just listening to the show. The algorithm goes off of if you're sharing it or if you're leaving a review. And it's free to leave a review, and we'd really love it.
Even if you hate it.
Yeah, and as we see the reviews, we'll give shout-outs to you guys on the reviews. But we would love, leave a negative review. But we would love for you guys, if you guys could get behind that. So it makes us rank higher. There's on Apple and Spotify, there's spirituality. Yeah. And we can rank higher on that, and then it helps us get more listeners, more sponsors and stuff like that, so we can produce more content. That's what we're all about. We love this. We were just talking about off the air how much we love this.
We literally love it. It was just we're invigorated by doing this, sharing, teaching, and and again, it's also thanks to our partners that sponsor us.
Yeah, Tartle.co.
Tartle.co, where you can share data, earn money, and change your world. Takes only a brief moment to sign up.
Quality Mazda.
Quality Mazda here in Albuquerque. So if you're in the Southwest of the United States, they do ship, and it's like a wonderful experience for actually getting yourself into a new car so you can move yourself around.
Awesome.
Because freedom of movement's important.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.